There is a moment right before you fall asleep when the world stops asking you to prove anything. In that moment, you are not waiting for evidence. You are not scrolling for reassurance. You are simply resting in a feeling, and that feeling, whatever it is, becomes the seed of tomorrow. Understand this. That drowsy, half-lit state you rush past every night is the doorway to the only power you have ever needed. And tonight, we are going to walk through that doorway together, slowly, deliberately, so that you finally understand what it means to live as though your wish had already happened. Not tomorrow, not next year, yesterday. Think about this for a moment. When something has already happened, you don't beg for it, you don't chase it, you don't lie awake wondering if it's coming. You simply carry it quietly, the way you carry the memory of your own name. There is no tension in a memory, there is no desperation in a fact. And this is the secret hidden in plain sight within every sacred text, every mystical teaching, every whisper of wisdom that has ever tried to describe the nature of creation. The past is not gone. The future is not far away. They are both alive right now inside the one place you have never fully explored, your own imagination. Let that sink into your spirit. Time, as you have been taught to understand it, is a convenience, not a truth. It is a structure the outer mind uses to organize experience, but it is not the structure that governs creation. Creation happens in a timeless present, in the eternal now, in the only moment that has ever truly existed. And when you assume that your desire has already been fulfilled, you are not lying to yourself. You are aligning yourself with a deeper truth than the one your eyes report back to you. You are stepping out of the tyranny of not yet and into the quiet authority of already done. This is why so many people struggle to manifest the life they long for. They keep their desire in the future. They say, one day I will have that. And in doing so, they unconsciously push it further away, because the mind, the deep inner mind that shapes your experience, does not build from longing. It builds from believing. It does not respond to hope. It responds to identity. And as long as your desire lives out there somewhere ahead of you, separated from you by time and effort and luck, it will stay exactly where you placed it. Ahead of you, always ahead of you, forever almost here. But something changes, something profound and almost impossible to describe, when you stop asking your desire to arrive and instead recognize that it already has. This is the heart of the time collapse method, not a technique you perform once and forget, but a state of being you step into and never fully leave. You do not visualize the wish coming true in some distant future. You remember it as though it happened yesterday. You feel the version of yourself who already has it, already lives it, already breathes inside of it, and you let that feeling become more real to you than the room you are sitting in right now. Consider this. Your imagination is not a toy. It is not a form of entertainment or escape. It is the single most sacred faculty you possess, the very substance through which all things are made. Long before anything appears in the world of form, it exists first as an image, a feeling, an inner conviction. This is not poetic language. This is the mechanism of creation itself. The outer world is not the source of your reality. It is the reflection of it. It is the echo, not the voice. And when you finally understand that the visible world is simply consciousness pushed out into form, you stop trying to change the reflection and you start changing the one who is looking into the mirror. Feel this deeply. You have spent so much of your life trying to rearrange the reflection, trying to fix the outer circumstances, hoping that if the job changes, or the relationship changes, or the bank account changes, then finally you will feel at peace. Finally you will feel worthy. Finally you will feel like the person you were always meant to be. But it was never meant to work that way. The feeling was always supposed to come first. The identity was always supposed to be assumed before the evidence arrived. This is the ancient order of creation, and it has never once been reversed, no matter how convincingly the world tries to tell you otherwise. There is a reason the wisest teachings of the ages speak of the word becoming flesh. not flesh becoming word, not the outer condition dictating the inner truth. The inner conviction, the inner declaration, the inner assumption becomes the very thing you see, touch, and live inside of. In the beginning was the assumption, and the assumption held long enough, felt deeply enough, believed completely enough, becomes the world you wake up to. This is not mysticism removed from your daily life. This is the operating principle behind every state you have ever entered and every circumstance that state has ever produced. Now let us return to time, because time is the final illusion you must dissolve if you are going to master this method. You have been taught to think of your life as a straight line stretching from a fixed past through an uncertain present into an unknown future. But look closer. The past you remember is not the past as it objectively was. It is the past as you have interpreted it, colored by feeling, shaped by meaning, reconstructed by the very consciousness that is remembering it. And if the past can be reshaped by consciousness, then consciousness is more powerful than the past itself. It is not bound by it. It moves through it freely, the way a dreamer moves through a dream. This is why revision is so powerful, and why we will return to it again and again throughout this journey. When you lie in bed at night and revise the events of your day, imagining them as you wish they had gone rather than how they actually unfolded, you are not indulging in fantasy. You are exercising the same power that built the day in the first place. You are proving to yourself through direct inner experience that the past is not fixed the way you were told it was. It is malleable. It bends beneath the weight of a new assumption. And if the past can bend, so too can everything you call the future, because the future is simply the past that has not yet been remembered. Let this settle within you. When you say your wish has already happened, you are not performing a trick of self-deception. You are recognizing that the event exists, fully formed, complete, whole, somewhere within the infinite field of consciousness that contains every possibility. It is not something you must build brick by brick through anxious effort. It is something you must remember, the way you remember a name you once knew but temporarily forgot. And the way to remember it is not through struggle. It is through relaxed, natural, almost effortless assumption. You assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled the way you assume the feeling of your own hands resting in your lap, without strain, without doubt, without asking permission from the visible world. Notice what happens when you try this, even for a moment. Close your eyes right now if you are able, and imagine that the thing you desire most has already come to pass, not as a future hope, but as a settled fact. Feel the relief of it. Feel the quiet satisfaction of it. Feel the way your shoulders drop and your breath deepens when there is nothing left to chase because it is already yours. That feeling, that exact feeling, is the raw material of manifestation. It is not something you generate once and discard. It is something you return to again and again until it becomes more familiar to you than your current circumstances. You must realize that your current circumstances are not permanent truths. They are simply the outer expression of assumptions you have held in the past, some of them consciously chosen, most of them absorbed without your awareness from family, culture, fear, and repetition. But an assumption that was accepted unconsciously can be replaced by an assumption that is accepted consciously. This is the entire premise of inner transformation. You are not fighting the world. You are not fighting other people. You are simply changing what you assume to be true about yourself and allowing the world to rearrange itself around that new inner position. This is why identity must always come before manifestation. It is not enough to want a new circumstance. You must become, in your own self-concept, the kind of person to whom that circumstance naturally belongs. If you desire abundance but secretly still identify as someone who struggles, someone who is always one step behind, someone for whom money is difficult, then no visualization technique in the world will override that deeper self-concept, because your self-concept is the lens through which all your experience is filtered. Change the lens and the entire picture changes with it. This is not effort. This is not force. This is simply the quiet, steady decision to no longer identify with what you do not want to become. Let that thought settle. You are not the sum of your past failures. You are not the character your circumstances have written for you. You are the one doing the imagining, the one behind the eyes, the one who has up until now unconsciously agreed to certain limitations simply because they were familiar. But familiarity is not truth. It is only repetition. And repetition can be redirected. Every night as you drift towards sleep, you have the opportunity to redirect it, to assume a new identity, to lie down as the old self and rise in your imagination as the new one. This is not childish pretending. This is the deepest spiritual work available to a human being because it is the work of becoming. Imagine for a moment a version of yourself who already carries the peace you have been seeking. This version does not need anything to change outside of them in order to feel whole. They walk through their day grounded, steady, quietly confident, because the desire that once consumed their thoughts has already been fulfilled. There is no more waiting in them. There is no more checking, no more hoping, no more subtle anxiety humming beneath the surface of every interaction. They have already arrived. Now ask yourself, honestly, gently, without judgment, how far is that version of you from the one sitting here right now? The distance is not made of time, it is made of belief, and belief can shift in a single moment of true inner conviction. The truth is, most people never allow themselves to fully occupy the state of the wish fulfilled because some part of them is afraid of being disappointed. They keep one foot in hope and one foot in doubt, and that division, that inner split, is precisely what keeps the desired outcome suspended in uncertainty. You cannot manifest from a divided heart. You must choose, not with clenched fists and desperate willpower, but with the calm, settled certainty of someone who has already received what they asked for and no longer needs to hold their breath waiting for confirmation. This is faith, not as blind hope, but as inner knowing, the kind of knowing that does not require the outer world's permission to feel true. This is where the time collapse method becomes so liberating because it removes the burden of the future entirely. You are not trying to make something happen someday. You are simply remembering something that in the timeless dimension of consciousness has already occurred. When you say this happened yesterday, you dissolve the anxious gap between where you are and where you want to be. There is no gap. There is no waiting room. There is only the present assumption, alive and complete, radiating outward into form the way heat radiates from a flame. You do not have to force the warmth. You simply have to stay near the fire long enough for it to reach you. Let this deepen even further. Every night is an opportunity to die to the old self and rise as the new one. This is not a morbid idea, it is the most hopeful idea available to you, because it means nothing about your past is fixed, nothing about your current identity is permanent, and nothing about your future is guaranteed to repeat what has already been. Each time you fall asleep in the state of the wish fulfilled, feeling the relief, the joy, the quiet gratitude of having already received your desire, you are participating in a kind of resurrection. The old self, the self defined by lack, by waiting, by frustration, is laid to rest, and the new self, the one who already carries the fulfillment within them, rises in its place, ready to meet a world that has no choice but to reflect what you have become within. You are not a passive observer of your life. You are not a victim of random circumstance, tossed about by luck or fate or the decisions of other people. You are the imaginer, the one whose inner assumptions form the blueprint from which outer experience is built. This is not a burden. It is the deepest form of freedom because it means the power was never outside of you. It was never in the hands of another person, another circumstance, another stroke of luck. It has always been within you, patiently waiting for you to recognize it, to claim it, to use it deliberately instead of by accident. Think about how much of your life has been shaped by unconscious assumption, the way you assumed without ever examining it that certain kinds of success were not meant for you, the way you assumed love had to be difficult or money had to be scarce or your body had to be a source of struggle rather than a source of ease. None of these assumptions were ever handed to you as absolute truth. They were handed to you as suggestions absorbed so early and so repeatedly that they came to feel like facts. but a suggestion, no matter how old, no matter how deeply rooted, can be replaced. This is the work. Not fighting the old belief directly, which only strengthens it through resistance, but quietly, patiently assuming the new belief until it becomes more familiar than the old one ever was. Allow yourself to see this clearly. The subconscious mind, the deep inner ground from which your outer life grows, does not evaluate whether an assumption is true or false based on outer evidence. It simply accepts whatever is impressed upon it with feeling and repetition, and then works tirelessly to make that impression manifest as fact. This is why feeling is so much more important than mere thinking. You can think a positive thought 1,000 times, but if it carries no emotional conviction, it remains on the surface, unable to penetrate the deeper layers where real transformation occurs. But a single moment of genuine feeling, a single moment where you truly believe, truly feel, truly live inside the reality of your wish fulfilled, can outweigh months of half-hearted repetition. This is why the state just before sleep is so sacred. In that drowsy threshold, the critical, analytical, doubting part of the mind grows quiet. It loosens its grip. And in that loosened state, whatever you dwell upon sinks more easily into the deeper mind, past the usual defenses, past the usual arguments, past the usual "but what if it doesn't happen" that so often interrupts your waking attempts at belief. This is why we return again and again to that moment before sleep, because it is the doorway with the least resistance, the place where assumption can be planted most deeply and take root most quickly. Understand this: you do not need to convince the whole world that your desire has already come true. You do not need external validation. You do not need anyone else's belief or agreement. This is entirely an inner transaction, a private conversation between you and the deeper part of yourself that shapes your experience. No one else needs to know what you are assuming. No one else needs to understand the shift taking place within you. In fact, the less you explain it, defend it, or seek approval for it, the more powerful it becomes, because it remains untouched by the doubt of others, sealed within the sanctuary of your own imagination, growing quietly until it is ready to appear. Let this thought expand. There is a kind of holy secrecy in true manifestation. The old teaching spoke of going into your inner room and shutting the door, praying not to be seen, not to be heard by the outer world, but only by the Father within, the deeper self, the source of all creative power. This inner room is not a physical space. It is a state of consciousness, a place you enter whenever you turn away from the noise of circumstance and rest fully in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Every time you enter that room, you are practicing the oldest and most sacred spiritual discipline there is, the discipline of controlled imagination, wielded not carelessly but with reverence, with intention, with quiet, unshakable conviction. Consider what it would mean to walk through your days carrying a secret so satisfying that you no longer need anyone to notice you, congratulate you, or confirm you. This is the state of true inner fulfillment, and it is available to you the moment you stop waiting for the outer world to give you permission to feel complete. Feel this deeply. The permission you have been waiting for was never going to come from outside of you. It was always meant to come from within. The moment you decided quietly and completely that your desire is no longer something you are pursuing, but something you are remembering. Let us go even further into this, because the mind often wants proof before it will fully surrender to an assumption, and proof in the world of appearances always seems to lag behind the world of inner conviction. This is not a flaw in the system. It is simply the natural order of creation. The seed is planted before the harvest appears. The assumption is held before the circumstance rearranges itself around it. If you expect the outer world to shift the instant you change your inner state, you may grow impatient and abandon the very assumption that was about to bear fruit. This is why patience, or more precisely persistence without anxiety, is so essential. Not persistence born of desperation, but persistence born of quiet confidence. The same quiet confidence you would feel if you already knew, without a single doubt, that the outcome was inevitable. Think about how a farmer plants a seed. The farmer does not dig up the earth every few hours to check on its progress. That kind of anxious interference would destroy the very process it is meant to protect. The farmer plants, waters, and then trusts the process, going about their days with the quiet expectation that in due time the harvest will come. This is the posture you must adopt toward your own desires. Plant the assumption, feel it as though it has already come to pass, and then release the anxious need to check, to measure, to demand immediate proof. The proof will come. It always comes. But it comes on its own timeline, a timeline governed by inner readiness rather than outer urgency. This is why the time collapse method is so freeing, because it removes urgency from the equation entirely. If your wish already happened yesterday, there is no need to rush it into happening today. There is no frantic energy pushing against the natural unfolding of events. You simply live from the fulfilled state day after day, allowing your outer life to slowly, steadily rearrange itself to match the inner conviction you are holding. Some changes will appear almost immediately, small synchronicities, subtle shifts in mood, unexpected opportunities that seem to arrive out of nowhere. Others will take longer, weaving themselves through the fabric of your circumstances in ways you may not even notice until you look back and realize how far you have come. Let that sink into your spirit. Growth in consciousness is rarely dramatic in the moment. It is only in retrospect that you see how profoundly your inner world has shifted, how differently you now respond to situations that once would have triggered fear or scarcity or doubt. This is the quiet evidence of transformation, not a single miraculous event, but a gradual, steady realignment of your entire way of being. And this realignment begins every single time with a decision. The decision to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and to hold that assumption with the calm, settled certainty of someone remembering a fact rather than hoping for a possibility. Now let us speak directly to the practice itself, so that this teaching becomes something you can actually live, not just something you understand intellectually. Each night as you prepare for sleep, choose one clear, specific desire. Do not scatter your attention across a dozen different wishes. Choose one and give it your full inner focus. Construct a small scene, a brief moment that implies your desire has already been fulfilled. Not a grand, elaborate story, but a simple sensory moment, a friend congratulating you, a voice on the phone delivering good news, the feeling of relief as you glance at your bank account, the warmth of an embrace from someone you love, the quiet satisfaction of a body that finally feels at ease. Keep it brief, keep it vivid, and most importantly, keep it charged with feeling. As you imagine this scene, feel it as though it happened yesterday, not as something you are hoping will occur, but as something you are remembering casually, the way you might recall an ordinary event from your recent past. There is no strain in this remembering. There is no clenched effort. There is only the soft, natural recall of something that already belongs to you. Let yourself smile faintly, the way you would smile at a pleasant memory. Let your breathing slow. Let your body soften into the bed beneath you. And in that softened, receptive state, allow the scene to repeat gently in your mind again and again until you drift into sleep, still feeling the warmth of its truth. This nightly practice, repeated with patience and consistency, begins to reshape the deep architecture of your beliefs. It is not a one-time ritual that produces overnight miracles, though sometimes it does produce results with startling speed. It is a discipline, a devotion, a daily returning to the inner room where your true power resides. Understand this: consistency matters more than intensity. A calm, steady assumption held every night will outperform a single burst of desperate visualization performed once and then abandoned. The subconscious mind responds to repetition and feeling, not to sporadic effort fueled by anxiety. There is another dimension to this practice that deserves your full attention, and that is the revision of the day now behind you. Before you enter into the scene of your future assumed as past, Take a few moments to revise anything in your day that did not align with the person you are becoming. If a conversation left you feeling small or overlooked, replay it in your imagination the way you wish it had gone, giving yourself the confidence, the clarity, the peace that the actual moment lacked. This is not denial. This is not pretending something painful did not occur. It is the recognition that the meaning of any event is not fixed the moment it happens. It continues to be shaped by how you carry it afterward, and revision allows you to carry it differently, more powerfully, more aligned with the identity you are choosing to embody. Notice what happens when you make revision a nightly habit alongside your assumption practice. Slowly, the events of your days themselves begin to change, not because you are rewriting history in some magical sense, but because the state you carry forward from each revised evening becomes the state from which your next day is lived. You cannot enter tomorrow carrying yesterday's disappointment without that disappointment coloring everything you experience, but revise the disappointment, transmute it into peace, and you enter tomorrow lighter, clearer, more receptive to the good that is trying to reach you. You must realize that this entire method rests upon a single foundational truth, one that the wisest spiritual teachers throughout history have tried in 1,000 different ways to communicate. You are not separate from the source of creation. You are not a small, powerless being at the mercy of an indifferent universe. You carry within you the same creative power that shapes galaxies and seasons and the quiet miracle of a single heartbeat. This power expresses itself through your imagination, through your assumptions, through the feelings you choose, consciously or unconsciously, to dwell within. When you finally accept this truth, not as a comforting idea, but as a lived reality, your entire relationship with your circumstances transforms. You stop begging life for good things to happen to you. You stop comparing your timeline to someone else's. You stop scanning the outer world anxiously for signs that you are on the right track. Instead, you turn inward again and again, back to the only place where creation actually happens, and you tend that inner garden with the same devotion a gardener gives to the soil they know will eventually yield a harvest. You do not judge the soil for not producing flowers overnight. You trust the process because you understand the deeper law governing it. Let this settle within you.